I'm here today with my daughter Melissa, and we are going to be doing a show that I believe is going to be extremely helpful for parents because we are going to be talking about those children who sometimes drive parents a little bit crazy. And those are the children who come into life hardwired in a way that makes them very sensitive to their environment. Sometimes they have big reactions to their feelings or to what's going on around them. They may come into this life what I call freedom seekers, which means they know that nothing feels as wonderful as being in their full empowerment. And when they don't feel empowered, their behavior shows it. Usually it's because they don't know how to express what they need, and parents can misunderstand their children's behavior. Some of these children actually can read energy, and instead of just reacting to the physical that's going on around them, they're reacting to what they are picking up energetically. And many parents' reaction to these children looks like this: what's wrong with you? Why do you have to do this? Why can't you just stop it? And actually what that does is it makes the kids a little crazy, and their behavior becomes even bigger. And then the parents get even angrier. And then we're into this cycle of power struggles, of not being heard, of not being validated, of bigger behavior, of a lot of frustration from the grown-ups. So Melissa's come today to give a voice, to give understanding, to help explain what these children are actually experiencing and feeling, because she was one of these kids. Yes, and I was her mother. And I have to say that you can still understand all this intellectually and still be very challenged. The important thing for all of us to take away from today, more than anything I believe, is the children aren't manipulating their parents. They aren't doing it on purpose. They are having true, valid, authentic reactions to life based on their hard wiring, which we sometimes call temperament, and the way they've come in, and we can't change them. So, if we can't change them, what do we do with them? How do we live with them? And how do we honor who they are and still take care of ourselves? Melissa's going to help us understand all of this. And I just want to put a little caveat in there. I didn't know everything I know now when she was a little girl. And just like every parent, we do the best we can, sometimes, with what we know. And sometimes we don't do the best we can with what we know because we're stressed ourselves or we have our own stuff going on. But nothing is going to help as much as giving some clarity and some understanding to what these children are experiencing when they come in hardwired like this. So I want to give Melissa an opportunity to give a voice to the children who you're living with. And it doesn't matter whether you're living with toddlers, babies, preschoolers, school agers, or even teenagers. It's really important to hear what she has to say, and then we'll interpret it how it might look in your home, depending upon the age of your children, and how to handle it. So Melissa.
Yes.
I just want everybody to know that you came into life 4 years after your big brother, Matt. And Matthew came into life one of these easygoing children. If you have an easygoing child, you can't understand what it's like to live with a child who comes in intense and sensitive and freedom-seeking and energy reading. Because if you have a child who comes into life like your brother, easygoing, and who makes peace with life easily, who lets things roll off his back, who comes into new situations, no big deal, kids like that make life easy for their parents. You didn't come in like that. No, you didn't. In fact, I had a very big ego with your brother. I really thought that the reason why he listened so easily, why things moved along so easily in our life, was because I knew everything. And then you came to teach me otherwise. And we tease about this, but it's the truth. I really believe Melissa came into my life to push me, to hold up a mirror to me and say, Mama, you don't know everything. It doesn't matter what your degrees are. I'm here to really give you your advanced degree. And so pretty much that's what we're going to do today. We're going to give you all an advanced degree in understanding these intense, sensitive children. So,
Yeah.
Melissa, you came into life hardwired, and sensitive. What does that mean? Try to give clarity and explanation of what it is to come into this world hardwired as a sensitive person.
Well, I can only speak to my experience, and I don't know what it is to experience life in any other way. So, what some people deem being sensitive, being an energy reader, to me is normal. It's the way that I've always experienced life. I don't understand necessarily how people who don't experience life this way perceive things, because I can't step into their body. But for me, I know that stimulus, noise, sound, light, smells, even the way clothing feels, I feel it, to the best of my understanding, more intensely than other people. Things that don't bother other people, like tags in their clothing, like sometimes perfume, sometimes a TV noise, static on the radio, those things affect me and almost cripple me from being able to focus outside of that stimulus until it's changed. I also pick up on energy. I can walk into a room and sense somebody's intentions. I think part of why I struggled in school was sometimes teachers would say one thing, but I could feel that they really meant or were coming from a different place, and so I could sense a hypocrisy between their words and their energy, and even as an adult, that's very hard for me to be around. I know that my big reactions, my intensity shows itself in the midst of things like that, where when I can feel energy. I don't know how else to describe it. Anybody who experiences what I experience probably is saying, yes, I understand. And if you've not experienced it, you're probably saying, what does she mean? But it's a gut thing. I feel it in my body. It's like when somebody feels an intuition, that's the way that this feels to me. It's like, it's not an intellectual thing. It's a visceral response. And those are the things that I pick up on. And so people who don't experience those kind of cues maybe don't understand why I'm responding in a way when they can't see or feel or experience what I'm experiencing. But I think that being a highly sensitive person is just perceiving the world through more attuned senses. That's the only way that I can really describe it.
And people who don't even intellectually understand this can judge sensitive people. I mean, I've heard people say, she's just too sensitive for her own good, so she should stop being so sensitive. And what you're saying is, you can't stop.
You can't.
It's like someone saying to you, you're breathing too much air. Stop breathing so much air. No, you've got to breathe. You've got to breathe.
Right. It would be like saying to somebody who is 7 foot tall, you're too tall, you're seeing the world from a different vantage point than somebody who's a child who's at 2 feet tall. Don't be so tall. But if that's how they are when they stand, that's the way that they're seeing and experiencing the world. They can't necessarily change it, and they don't even understand that the way that they're seeing it is different from other people, because that's just their perspective.
So for a child, it must be very confusing to come to the world highly sensitive, not understanding that you're picking things up that other people aren't,
Yeah.
and then other people don't understand you when you're having a reaction to what you're picking up, and they're saying to you, stop it, what's wrong with you? That's got to feel horrible.
Yeah, and I think for a long time I thought there was something wrong with me for being so sensitive, because a lot of other people would say things like that, like, don't let it bother you, don't be so sensitive, don't notice it, but it's not possible for me to not notice it. It's not possible for me to be not so sensitive. That's who I am. That's the way that I experience things.
Yeah, I tell parents, when I do the parenting classes, that we don't choose our children's hardwiring. We call that temperament, but there's even more to hardwiring than temperament. And you can choose the car that you want. So you could choose a car that takes a regular gas or high-test gas, and you're not going to be mad at a car that takes high-test gas because the prices went up. You chose that car.
Yes.
Or if you go to get a dog, let's say, if you pick a Jack Russell Terrier, I always use them because they have to run, they have to move. They're the ones who'll jump over the fence and get lost, several blocks away, because those dogs have to move. You can't say to the dog, I'm tired, I don't feel like giving you a good run, so sit still. The dog is hardwired to run.
Yeah.
But we don't get to choose our kids' hardwiring, and that's really hard for parents, because most parents that I know wouldn't choose to have a sensitive child.
Sure.
Unless they really understood the gift that they are. I think if we knew how to be with a sensitive child, we might then say, come on, God, give me more, because they have so many amazing qualities that come with the sensitivity. But if we don't understand what's going on, especially when they're having big reactions, I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
Is that because you're picking up things that other people aren't picking up, and then you're reacting to it, but the other people don't understand why you're having the reaction, then it's annoying to them. It's like confusing, like, what is going on with you? Whoa, so what do you want to tell people who don't understand these intense, sensitive people? And by the way, you're now in your 30s. It hasn't changed for you,
Not
right?
at all.
No, here's the bad news is hardwiring doesn't change. Your hardwiring is yours forever and ever. So, so what is it you would like people listening today who are trying to understand their children, but might also have a spouse, a mate, or a sibling who's hardwired like this? Once again, what is it that they've got to make peace with? You can't fight this.
Well, I think the first thing is that people who are highly sensitive, and I really can only speak to myself. I'm not trying to speak for anyone else. I can only share my own experience. But I think I feel emotions more intensely than other people. Almost like if you think about colors and saturation, like a bright, bright blue versus kind of a pale blue. It's like your emotions are more concentrated, more saturated is really the only word that I can think of.
And we use the word intense when we're talking about people, right?
Sure. So it's a more intense, and the upside is I feel good things really intensely. I'm really tuned into appreciation. I'm an artist. I'm highly visual. So it's not that being a highly sensitive, intense person is all negative. It's like it's just a more intense swing in both ways. So once I've kind of got a handle on understanding what it is to be highly sensitive, it's really turned into an asset for me. It's helped me make good business decisions. I listen to my intuition. It's helped me to be a wonderful artist. I don't think when I create. It comes from somewhere inside of me. It can be challenging when I'm in a situation where as you were saying, where I don't feel empowered, because then it kind of comes out in a stronger way on the more negative, unpleasant end to be around. So the first thing I think people need to understand is that people who are highly sensitive, intense beings feel things more intensely both ways, the good feelings and the bad feelings. So sometimes I think people don't understand that that's part of who I am, that that's just part of my hardwiring, is that I really feel things intensely all the time. It's not something that shuts off. It's not something that I can dim or mute. That's just kind of the way that my emotional senses work really intensely. I guess the other key piece to being with a highly intense person is trying to hear them when they explain where they're coming from. I know that for me it can be really frustrating when I try and express my experience and people either don't understand or
tell you to get over it.
Or tell me to get over it, or tell me not to be so sensitive, or to ignore the thing that's bothering me. Those things not only don't work, but they push me into more intense unhappiness, discomfort, not feeling heard, and that's usually when I have a big reaction.
So let's use that to talk about toddlers.
Okay.
Because I think that for many parents who have intense, sensitive children, the first year, as infants could be a tough year too,
Sure.
because many times these children react to their feedings. I mean, I breastfed you, and we still struggled with that. Um, the if a child's on formula, a lot of times these sensitive kids don't do well with any of the food that's given to them. Their bellies are sensitive.
I just want to say, as an adult, I'm still sensitive to food.
Yeah.
That hasn't changed either.
Right. So the children are picking up the way things smell.
Yeah.
If mommy body doesn't smell good, if you're trying to give the baby to another person who doesn't smell good or whose energy doesn't feel authentic, the baby is picking it up and may start crying or trying to get away, and you're saying, what's wrong with this child? So the child may have a hard time falling asleep for a variety of reasons. If you change where they're sleeping, maybe they're used to the crib, and then you go visiting somebody and you just want the baby to sleep someplace else. You will like that, actually. If the infant is a sensitive infant, you might have had a really tough start in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And then it really, really revs up. And here's where the power struggles begin, when that child starts walking. Because like any other child who's 1 or 2 years old, the way they perceive the world, just generally for all kids, is what a big, great, fabulous world with such good stuff to touch and taste and try and climb, and it's all mine. I can't wait to get in it. And then what happens is the parent or whoever's with the child is saying, no, don't touch, or that's not for you, or no, don't go there, come over here. And if you're sensitive,
you don't like being told what to do.
Mm-hmm. If you're sensitive and something looks really good, you really want it, and somebody telling you no, how does that feel?
Well, again, I can only speak for myself, but I know that one of the aspects of temperament that you talk about is persistence, and
a lot of sensitive, intense kids are also persistent.
Yeah, and so I know for me, if there's something that I want to do, and this is from the time I was little to being an adult, if I am set on wanting to do something, it doesn't matter if I'm told not to do it, it doesn't matter if I'm not supposed to, it doesn't matter if it doesn't please other people, I'm going to do it. And so when people tell me not to do it, not only does it not work, it almost adds fuel to my fire of wanting to do it.
And that, I think, comes from, again, it's like this.
It's a freedom seeking.
It's like a package deal.
Yeah.
A lot of times, the children who are sensitive, intense reactors, are also freedom seekers.
Yes.
Which means they know somewhere in their setup. It's not intellectual when they're little. Now it's intellectual. You understand it.
Yeah.
But when you're a toddler, you don't know this stuff intellectually. You just know how it feels.
Yeah.
And you know that it doesn't feel good when someone says no.
No.
and there are children, just like Melissa's brother, where if I said, and of course I was using my teacher tactics way back then, which I thought were so brilliant, oh honey, that's not for touching. Come over here, this is for touching. That worked with him. He was able to turn around. He was able to take his attention somewhere else that was fun, and because he was after just having a good time. Really, he was just having a good time. Didn't work for you.
And it still doesn't.
It wasn't about having a good time.
Right.
It was about feeling her freedom.
Right.
And so I would use the same tactics with Melissa, and I would say, oh, honey, that's not for touching. Look what I have over here for you. And you would look me straight in the face and keep going for it. And I, as your mother, would say, wait a minute, why isn't this working? It worked beautifully with her brother. And the truth is, way back then, I didn't know what I know now. Now, I would say to myself, ooh, different hard wiring. Not bad girl, not brat, not impossible, not manipulative, which is how we immediately think about these children.
Right.
And this is right here with the way we judge or think about the children. This is the magic moment. Because if you understand, especially when your children are young, it's clearer because we don't have years and years of experiences mixing in now.
Right.
But when they're very young, most of their reactions are as a direct result of their hard wiring. So if you have an infant or 1 or 2 year old who looks like they're really struggling, going, yes, ma'am, anything you say, okay. You know, it's very possible it's their hard wiring. And instead of thinking, this kid's a brat, this kid needs a spanking, this kid needs to know who's the boss, this kid, you know, if she was growing up in my grandma's house, she would be punished. The way you react to the child makes all the difference in the world. And it begins with how you understand them and how you think about them. So I know you all want me to tell you immediately, well, what should I do? How do I get them to listen? I'm telling you, this is how you do it. But it begins with, one, changing your understanding so you can shift your thinking. Because if you think this child is having a legitimate struggle, this child is having a hard time just stopping, touching, and listening to me. This is not someone who's manipulating and trying to be the boss and be bratty, but she's responding from the way she's hardwired, and the way I approach her is going to make all the difference in the world.
Yeah, and I just want to jump in and say, even as an adult, I don't get my way all the time. Life doesn't always work for me, and I can't always throw tantrums like a little kid to want my way. But I know for me, the thing that is most important is when whoever it is I'm in a situation validates what I'm experiencing. So, for example, if as a little child, if I was climbing or touching something inappropriate, and you would say to me, that's not for touching, maybe, I don't want to use better, but something that a more powerful way to interact with me about that would be to say something like, that looks like something you really want to touch. Let's either touch it together with mommy so that it's safe, or let's find something else that's exciting to touch. I think that I can really, again, only speak for myself, but the most important thing for me is to have my need validated, instead of just saying, don't do that, this is inappropriate, that can't happen, because, again, for me, anything that I'm doing is because there's an internal drive, there's an intuition, there's some desire to experience something, and so just saying, no, you can't do that, without validating why I want to do it, that's usually where a reaction kind of stirs. And I think for a lot of toddlers, for young children, school-age children, teenagers especially, not letting your child do what they want to do without explaining to them why, or saying back to them what it is that they want to do to help give the child language to express themselves, that's usually where those tantrums and big reactions come in.
Yes, and I want to say to everybody listening that all people need to be validated. We all do. Think about yourself. When you're struggling, when you're having a hard time, when you're having a big reaction, you don't want someone to say to you, oh, stop it. What's wrong with you? Just let it go. You know, even if you're an easygoing to life person, that sometimes you're legitimately struggling, and it's no fun for you to struggle. And I always say to parents, the first thing is to validate.
Yeah.
Validate. But especially, here's the thing with the sensitive, intense, freedom-seeking, energy-reading children. They need this even bigger than everybody else does. This is because if they don't get it, they almost can't function afterwards. And then they're going to have big reactions. And then you're going to be responding to their big reactions rather than to what the cause of the big reaction is. And so you're off on a totally, you're down a detour. It's like down the rabbit hole, and it's really hard to come back. And you're starting a relationship with your child so that by the time they're teenagers or young adults, you're not talking to each other. And I've heard many parents say, I just don't understand what happened. This used to be a sweet kid, and now we have no relationship, or she's, she defies me at every moment. And I'm telling you, this is where most of that begins. So listen carefully, and even if your kids are teenagers or grown, you can do something about it now. It begins with saying, oh my goodness, let me listen to you.
Yeah.
And more than listen, let me hear
you. Yeah.
Hear what you're saying, and let me say it back to you with authenticity. Not with, I'm just going to play a game, because you can read energy. Again, you said this before, and I think this is true for the kids. When a parent says, I'm sorry, and you're not really sorry, those kids know it.
And not only do they know it, but they're going to have a big reaction to the inauthenticity, and then the parent responds to the big reaction, and then the child responds to the parent's response to the big reaction, and nobody's being heard.
So let's go back, because this is so important. And as I said, it begins when they're very young, but you may have children now who are preschoolers, school ages, teenagers, young adults, and many of the issues you're experiencing with them stem from this.
Yes.
And even if they're not intense, sensitive reactors, if you listen to this, it will help you in all relationships, but particularly for those intense, sensitive ones. So if something happens, something is triggered for this child, you may not know what it is, because if they're picking up on all their senses, plus their sixth sense, which is this reading energy sense, and you're not picking up on it, and the child's now having a reaction, your tendency is to react to the child's reaction. Rather than react and say, what's the matter? What's wrong with you? Stop that, which is what we typically say. You can respond, and Melissa, you can help me with some responses, but what I usually say is, something doesn't feel good for you, honey?
Right.
Or, go ahead.
I was going to say, what's making you feel so bad? Or what's causing you to feel so explosive? I think even giving children the language of something feels off, something feels uncomfortable, something doesn't feel right to me, giving children the language to say those things will help them begin to verbalize what the specifics are, so that the parent can step in or not to help them fix the issue.
Well, two things are going on here. One is you're validating them,
Yeah.
which soothes everything and also creates your relationship with them. They start to believe that they can trust you, that
Yeah.
you understand them. But the second thing that's going on is you're going to start to help them deal with who they are, because you're going to start to give language to what they're experiencing.
And when you do that, you help your child turn their sensitivity into an asset instead of a handicap. That's the most important thing, I think.
Yes. So again, let's go back and let's look at this. So you have a 2-year-old. Now again, you're not going to say to a 2-year-old, what's going on for you, because the 2-year-old doesn't have the language or
Sure.
the ability yet to give you an answer. So you actually have to begin to explain to the 2-year-old what's happening, and that doesn't mean impose stuff on him.
Sure.
But you can say, something doesn't feel good, or you look angry,
Mm-hmm.
or looks like you need some help over here. But you want to give general enough language that you're not imposing onto the child what he's experiencing, because you don't really know.
Sure.
But you definitely know something's up.
Yeah, I just want to say, anytime that I have a big reaction from the time I was a child, it's because there was something going on inside of me that I either wasn't able to express or other people weren't understanding. Every time I have a big reaction, it comes back to that.
So what would have, do you think, I know it's hard to remember as a child, but what would have felt good just to hear something doesn't feel good for you?
Probably hearing something doesn't feel good to you would be much better than you're so sensitive.
Yeah, and I know I said that.
Or just ignore it.
Yes, when her brother knew exactly how to rile her up, he would take his little finger and just kind of go like this, and she'd shriek. And my reaction as a mother back then was to say, Melissa, if you would just ignore him, he would stop doing it. And tell them how it felt for you.
Yeah, I think that my memory of when that would happen would be in the back seat of the car. And he would
Yes.
put his little pinky across the middle of the car. And again, as a highly sensitive person, having personal space is important. Feeling safe without somebody being in your energy field is really important. And so he knew that doing that would get a rise out of me. And so what maybe would have been better for me.
Okay, I didn't know it all then.
If you would have said, Matthew, are you doing something to your sister to make her have a big reaction?
And he probably would have said, who, me? You know,
Yeah.
he was really good at that. Now,
Very
remember,
good at that.
this is not a show on sibling relationships, and I think we could probably do one after this on that. But it does show up, because if you're in a family with more than one child, and one is sensitive, or one is an intense reactor or a freedom seeker or an energy reader, the other siblings know they can get a rise out of that kid easily.
Easily.
Yes, and a lot of sibling rivalry is about power.
Yeah.
So even if you got good kids, everybody wants to feel their sense of empowerment. And if a child is not feeling empowered or he's bored, he can do or she could do something so tiny that will get a bang and a rise and a shriek out of the sensitive one. And for the most part, the parents are saying to the sensitive one, "What's wrong with you? Stop it! Don't make a big deal out of it. Just ignore him." And what you're telling us, Melissa, me too. You're telling me
I couldn't just ignore him. That was not an option. And moreover, saying to me, just ignore him, felt like it was invalidating my experience.
Yeah. And as your parent, I wanted the shortcut. And because as parents, we're tired, we're stressed, it's like enough already. So the shortcut was, Melissa, just don't make a big deal out of it and he'll stop.
But actually, the shortcut is validating me, because saying just ignore him, while maybe in the moment it worked, but in the long run it didn't. And we would have those incidents over and over and over again. Whereas if you had known then to say something like, "Melissa, something's really bothering you. What's going on? It feels like your brother's doing something to you. Can you tell me what he's doing?" If I could say something like, "He's putting his finger on my seat. He's in my space." I don't know that I had the language for that then, but if we were able to unravel what the root of my reaction was, then it wasn't about me ignoring him. Then we could actually deal with what was causing the behavior, and even though it would have taken a little more work in the beginning, it would have been a shortcut to a healthier relationship between me and my brother, less shrieking in the backseat of the car. I'm coming to understand that the shortcut is always validating the child's experience instead of responding to the behavior.
Yes. So if you had heard something's going on that doesn't feel good for you, Melissa, I think the next step would have been if I could have helped you face Matthew, so you would have felt your empowerment and said to him, "I don't like when you do it," or "Don't put your pinky here."
Yeah.
And then I could have said to Matthew, maybe you want to say out loud what you heard her say, so that he would have then said, "She doesn't like me putting my pinky there."
Yeah.
And I could have validated him too, because as a parent, it's really hard trying to validate everybody and keep your sanity.
Yeah.
So, do you want to play a game? Do you need a book to read? What else could you do so that you don't have to do that? Let's get back again to these intense, sensitive, freedom-seeking, energy-reading children. They're toddlers. They want. They're watching TV or something, and the parent says, "Okay, time to shut off the TV and take a bath." A lot of parents have this issue, and the toddler is in the middle of watching something. How would that? You just give language to us, Melissa. How do you think that would feel for you?
Yeah.
It's not easy for any child, but
Sure.
now you're this sensitive, intense, reacting kid. So I come in and I say, as sweet as I can, "Okay, honey, it's 7:00. Everybody's tired. You're dirty from playing. Let's go take a bath." And you have a big reaction.
Yes.
What's going on inside of you? Help us understand.
Well, number one is, as you mentioned, freedom seekers don't like to be told what to do. So, I don't know, maybe you have some suggestions for the people listening that maybe there are ways to put the power back in the child's hands.
Yes.
Like maybe create some routine where when the particular TV show ends at 7 o'clock, the child says, "Oh, it's time for my bath." So that the child feels empowered, like they're the one choosing to take the bath, even though they're just playing into a routine. Another option is giving the child a warning. I know, again, as a freedom seeker, the first time I'm told something, I'm not going to listen just because I'm not going to listen. And I understand it's not easy for parents, but once you understand the way that your child is wired, you can better do things so that they can respond well to you. So giving the child a warning, saying, in 5 minutes after the commercial is over, it's time for your bath. Giving your child a time-appropriate warning. So giving them a way to measure how long it's going to be and something that they'll understand.
Yeah, what these kids need is what all kids need. It's just that their reactions are usually a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
So what is it that all children need? They need to feel their empowerment.
Yeah.
They don't want to be bossed around. And Melissa has come to some of my workshops. Statistics are, research is showing that 80% of little kids' days are being bossed around. Now, maybe we don't feel like we're bossing them because we're their mommy or their daddy or their grandma or their teacher, and it's for their own good, and we just have to move. We just have to stop doing things and get going. But how it feels to the child feels like, stop what you're doing. What you're doing is not important. We have to get going. Hurry up. Let's go. And so here are the things I recommend. Routines are very important so children know what's coming next. And we can do another show just on helping you create routines. But when children know what's coming next already, they're empowered. It's not like you're springing something on them. Within those routines, if you can turn things around so the child feels like the child gets to be in charge. So it could be, when the commercial is over, you push the button and you come get me. It's not like you're making a brat. You're not. Many parents say, well, don't they have to learn? Don't they have to learn? They have to listen. Well, to a degree, but even as an adult, do you want to be bossed around all day long by somebody who says they have your best interest at heart but doesn't feel good?
And I just want to jump in and say, the thing that parents really want their children to learn is healthy empowerment. That's really what, and if you have a freedom-seeking child, you want your child to learn how to be empowered without a big reaction. Those are the things that you really want to teach that child.
And one of the ways of doing that is early on, being willing, to get to know what your child needs. And they need to feel like they're not being bossed around.
Yeah.
So, as a teacher of young children, we didn't have one or two. We had anywhere from 12 to 15 to 20 to 25. So, how did we do that and still have the children feel they were in their power? We made things into games. We made things into, I bet you I could do it faster than you can. We gave them things to anticipate. Like, we're going to go in the car and I got something special waiting for you. So if you're willing to go there with your children, they'll be more willing to shut off the TV and go do the next thing, whether it's take a bath or whether it's get in the car. If you make everything about, I'm the mommy or the daddy or the grandma, and you must listen to me, that's hard enough for children who are hardwired softer.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have children who are hardwired the way we're talking, you are almost declaring war on their dignity and on their systems.
Yeah, because those children really need to feel autonomy. They need to feel like they can make their own choices. They need to feel empowered and like they're the boss of themselves.
Now, I just want to put in here that there are parents who handle these kids with fear. You'll be punished if you don't listen. You'll get a spanking. You'll go in timeout. Those are, that's what parents use. And there are many times that actually works. You can scare a child with fear or punishments or spankings to shut down all this stuff we're talking about. But I'm telling you, it works in the moment and it creates long-term, terrible emotional damage.
Yeah, I want to jump in and say it's not actually working. It's fooling the parent into thinking that it's working. Because what it's actually doing is it's making the child feel terrible about themselves, and that child's not going to want to have a relationship with that parent when they're old, when they're an adult.
And by the time they're teenagers, it's so apparent because the child is in full-scale rebellion.
Absolutely.
And the parent is saying, this kid's been a pain in the neck since she's little. No wonder why she's rebelling, and there's more going on. I want to say that what happens for some children is they shut themselves down to protect themselves. And so what will happen, especially if they're really afraid of physical harm or emotional put-downs, they will put a curtain over who they are. They'll pull a veil down, an emotional veil, and they'll shut their feelings to be good and to please you. And I say be good in quotes. To please you so they can stay safe. And they grow up deadened to their feelings, shut down, except for anger. They know anger. And we have many people walking around this world who are little explosions waiting to happen because They're never in touch. And you know people who are in relationships and they say, he's shut down, she's so shut down, she doesn't know what she's feeling, she just wants everybody else to change. And so you want to be really, really careful by controlling children by fear of any kind. And you can control in the name of love. You can say, be a good boy for mommy, be a good girl for daddy. No, you don't want them to be good for you. You want them to be good because it feels good for them. Yeah. That's what true empowerment is, and that's how they'll go out into the world and being able to navigate what life gives them. It's about teaching them to be in tune with who they are, and to have the dignity of staying in touch with who they are. And it all begins with you noticing and validating what they're experiencing. And if you don't know exactly what they're experiencing, just to say, oh, something doesn't feel good for you right now.
I just wanted to jump in with what you were saying about these big reactors who get angry. Again, speaking for me, being angry feels more empowered than not. When people don't understand me, I find that I sometimes do get angry because at least I'm feeling my power in that. And so I think a lot of parents misinterpret their child's anger as what's the word? Being disrespectful.
Yes.
But it's actually the child finding the power as best they can in that moment. And if you're finding that your child is angry most of the time, chances are they don't feel like they're being heard by you. And that's their way of getting their power back.
That's really important because on the scale of human emotions, the absolute best, off-the-wall, greatest feeling is to be empowered, to be excited about life, to know that who you are feels wonderful and that there's glorious opportunity for you. And way at the other end of the scale is to feel totally disempowered, like you have no say over your life. Yeah. There's nothing to look forward to. You just feel like you're being bossed around, and the worst than that is a depression, because depression comes when there's no hope. Yeah. And if you're feeling depressed, like there's no hope, and you get a twinge of anger, it feels a lot better. At least you're feeling a little bit of your power.
Yeah.
You're feeling alive again. You're feeling hopeful, And not that anyone wants to stay in anger, and there are many people who do stay in anger. They don't know how to get past anger. But at least it feels better than being downright depressed where you can't get out of bed, or you just feel like it's hopeless and there's nothing to live for. So it's really important to understand that when you have a child who appears to be angry a lot, there's something very healthy in that. And instead of taking it as, shut up, figure it out yourself, get over it, I don't want to hear from you, just validate and say, man, you are really angry about something. Not with judgment. You've got to get the judgment. You're really angry. Something is really not working for you. Something doesn't feel good for you. And if you create a safe place, it's possible that child will say, yes! No one listens to me. He's always in my room. He's always touching my things. I hate it. And if you would just say, whoa, that has to feel horrible. That's magic. That's like waving a fairy wand and shifting everything.
I think you hit on something really important, which is very often we judge other people's emotions and we deem them appropriate or inappropriate. And parents do this to children all the time. And children experience emotions. They're not good or bad for experiencing them. It just is what it is. And so taking the judgment out of it and just saying, this is what you're feeling, and giving the child language to say, yes, I'm feeling angry. Yes, I'm frustrated. Yes, I'm happy. Giving the child the language to say that is really a healthy thing, because then as children get older and become teenagers and adults, they're not left feeling bad about themselves when they're angry. They don't feel bad about themselves when they're depressed. They just say, okay, this is where I am right now, and they can recognize it and then kind of move through it.
Yeah, I'm starting to think about, let's take this, I want to go back to toddler before we move into older children. Parents ask me about tantrums and how you handle tantrums. I want to say that these intense, sensitive kids are the ones who tend to have the tantrums. More than the children who can, okay, whatever you say, I'll shut the TV, I'll do what you want. Not that those kids are the good ones and the kids who have tantrums are the bad ones. It's really important we get that clear. It's the ones who are having the tantrums don't know how to handle their feelings.
Yes.
And it usually starts around 1 or 2 years of age, and that's because they're wanting to experience everything in life. They're wanting to run, they're wanting to jump, they're wanting to toddle away from you. They don't understand what safety issues are. And yes, and I'm not saying if your child runs into the street, grab them. Okay. But for everything else, you want to bring those toddlers into environments that are set up so that the toddler can explore as much as possible. You may not have control in somebody else's house, but in your own home where the child is spending the most time, you've got to take the breakables away. I know that was hard for me. I had a lot of stuff around. Matthew, I was able to say not for touching, and he didn't touch. Melissa, if I said not for touching, she'd really want to touch it. So I realized I just had to take it away.
Yeah.
It wasn't like she'll never learn. No, in that moment in her life, in that stage of her development, that worked better.
And I wasn't bad for wanting to touch it. That's just who I am.
That's really important.
Yeah.
It feels like a pain. Why can't you just be like your brother and not touch it?
Right.
And if you had language, you would have said, because I'm not my brother. I didn't come into this world hardwired like my brother, and I didn't come into this world to experience life like him. And I'm sorry, Mommy, if I'm making it more difficult for you, but that's who I am. And somewhere in another time and space, we agreed to this.
I want to say that I think it's really important for highly sensitive children to not be compared to other children.
Yes.
It really feels bad when
Yes.
a child is made to feel like what they're experiencing is wrong because their brother doesn't experience that.
Or their friends' children.
Yeah.
Or their sister's children. There's a little growling going on in the background. That's our highly sensitive dog.
Highly sensitive dog, yeah.
He definitely is. What will happen many times with these little ones when they want to explore the world and the parent, in the best of intentions, says no or come over here or let's do this. Because the child can't bear the way it feels, they'll start to have a tantrum. And what I want parents to really understand is these are legitimate reactions to frustration and to feelings that they don't know what to do with it. Go ahead.
I know that for me, even as an adult, the word no sets off a reaction. And I've heard you say in workshops before that parents can actually, instead of using the word no, use the word yes. So instead of saying, Melissa, no, don't touch that, you can say, yes, you want to touch that. Let me touch it with you. We'll be gentle together. Let's see how it is to be gentle. Or, no, you can't climb that tree. Instead, you could say, yes, you could climb the tree. You need an adult with you. Or, so because when you say no to a child who's highly sensitive, they hear it as what you want is wrong. That's the way that it comes across to a highly sensitive child. Whereas if you say yes, and then you give them parameters in which it's safe for them to do that thing that they want to do, generally they won't have such big reactions.
I think that's great, and it's really important. I hope you heard that. You can say no by saying yes. I know it sounds crazy, but in other words, it doesn't mean you always give in to the child. It doesn't mean they get everything they want the way they want when they want it, because nothing I ever say means it's a free-for-all in your house. It's all about the way you approach the child and you handle the challenge. So let's say a child asks for a cookie. That's another one that always happens, especially with your 2-year-olds, your 3-year-olds, your 4-year-olds. Mommy, can I have a cookie? They saw you shop for it. They were with you in the store. They watched you put it in the cabinet. They're hungry or they're bored or something made them think of the cookie. They say, can I have a cookie? And your snap reaction is no. And you have a legitimate reason. Maybe
It's almost dinner
or they had enough sweets for the day. It doesn't matter. They don't want to hear an intellectual explanation about how sugar rots their teeth and they had enough sugar for the day. So a child who's highly sensitive and an intense reactor, and you say no, I'm going to interpret how they feel, but of course Melissa can help me here. No, forever and ever. No, it's going to be a long, 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 long time till I'm going to have one of those delicious looking cookies. No, I'm just going to die. No, I can't handle the way I feel. No, I'm going to just have a breakdown and an attack because I don't know what else to do with my feelings. Is that pretty much just...
Yeah, I think so. And I can only, again, as a child, I don't remember everything from my childhood, but I would imagine that if I said, can I have a cookie, and you said no, I would probably go take it anyway and look you in the eye while I did it.
All right, but I also want to say to parents, when Melissa was 5 and she got chicken pox, I remember when the doctor told me it was chicken pox, and I had to tell Melissa that she had chicken pox. So this is not like wanting something. Okay, this is just reaction. I said, and she knew chicken pox was going around her class. And I said, Melissa, looks like you have chicken pox. Do you remember your reaction?
Yeah. Oh! And I fainted on the couch, and I was so overwhelmed, and I remember being laughed at and being told I was a Sandra Bernhardt and
Sarah Hartburn.
Sarah Hartburn.
No, Sarah Bernhardt. Sarah Bernhardt.
Sarah
That was
Bernhardt.
the actress way back in those days.
And
yeah.
And to me, it was a legitimate response because my body has always been healthy, and finding out that I had some kind of sickness and I'd be out of school for a week felt like the end of the world. And moreover, being made fun of or ridiculed for my response really didn't feel good. That felt like my response was wrong or inappropriate when my response to me felt normal. It felt normal.
Now, as her mother, it didn't feel normal to me. To me, it was a huge overreaction. And that's because I didn't have a show like this to listen to understand that to a sensitive, intense child, being told at 5 that she had chicken pox was like being told she couldn't have the cookie. It's just the reaction, because it feels so overwhelmingly disempowering, scary. I don't know how to handle my feelings. So they have this big reaction. If we don't understand that as their parent, we now judge the reaction, give them the message something's wrong with them, which intensifies what they're going through.
Absolutely.
And now their reaction gets bigger.
Absolutely.
And we keep saying things like, stop it, what's wrong with you, ridiculous, which makes them feel like that there's really something wrong with them.
Yeah, and as you're saying this, something that occurs to me is, I think for many highly sensitive children, they're very present, they're in the moment. And so when things happen, it feels like it's never going to change, like this is what it's going to be forever. And that actually, as an adult, is a real asset. It's a gift to be able to be present and take in what's going on and process it really quickly. But as a child, it feels like chicken pox is forever. It feels like you're never going to have the cookie. It feels like you have to take the bath and turn off the TV. You're never going to watch it again. So children have these big reactions because it feels like this moment is the rest of their lives. And so just kind of having that understanding that the way that you are with your child in this moment could cause a big reaction without having a build-up to it. To that child, it feels legitimate and natural.
And so here's what you do. Okay, because parents are saying, so what do you do? Let's go back to it. First, you validate. Whoa, this feels really bad. This feels so big. Whether it's you can't have the cookie or you've got chicken pox. It doesn't matter or your brother's teasing you in the car. This really doesn't feel good. And don't rush out of that. Just sit with that. Let the child know you're safe. That the child can trust you with her emotions. Because this is going to serve you well later on. And serve the child well later on. Because many parents are saying, they don't talk to me, they don't tell me. Yeah. You know why they don't talk to you and tell you anything? Because they don't trust you. Because your reactions in the past have been your own craziness. And I'm not saying it, that as a parent, you're not going to have reactions. But we're the ones who have to temper our reactions. Because we can teach and the children can learn from what we model. So again, first you validate it and you sit close and you say, honey, something doesn't feel good. No, chicken pox, I don't want chicken pox. It's not going to feel good. I'm going to be ugly. I'm going to blah, 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 blah. And you sit there. You don't talk them out of it. You say, I know.
I think that's really important is don't talk your intense, sensitive child out of their feelings. Don't try to make them feel like their feeling is an inappropriate reaction. Don't make them feel like what they're feeling is wrong. That's what they're feeling. It is.
Or say, I understand, but. Because
right.
I know I do this a lot too. Is I understand, But now I want to make my point. So I've lost the I understand. They don't really feel, and no one feels understood when
A
you're
better
rushing.
thing to say is I understand and then fill it in with something that is going to help the child really recognize that you do I understand, and chicken pox won't last forever.
That's it.
I understand, and you can have a cookie after dinner.
I understand it doesn't feel good. You know, I know something you might not know. Chickenpox can be fun.
It's true. I got to stay home from school for a week and watch TV.
You stay home. We could get videos. We could play games. And then, so now you're helping the child realize that there's more to life than that initial reaction.
Yes.
Because in that reaction, they feel stuck in their own reaction. And what you want to do is you want to help teach the child that they don't have to stay stuck in the reaction and that there's good stuff coming later. If it's the cookie they want and you say to them, oh, you want a cookie, huh? Those cookies look really yummy. We can't eat one now, but we sure can take one out now and save them for later. Now, the child still may not be happy, but what you're doing is you're teaching your child how to feel what they're feeling and not be a captive,
right.
Not be a prisoner of their own feelings. That's what you want to do.
It's how to move through those bad feelings and not stay in them.
And truly, that's what your whole childhood experience with your kids is going to be about.
Yeah.
Validating and showing them through their own experiences that they don't have to get stuck in it, that you're the person they're going to trust that's going to help them move through it, and then you're actually going to model and teach them how to change their thinking from I'm stuck in something I can't get out of, I'm going to kick and scream because I don't know what else to do with my feelings, to there's another way to look at this, there's another way to think about it. If your child has a breakdown, here's how you handle the tantrums. Just stay close and say, doesn't feel good now. You could cry. You could get it out of you. You could jump up and down. You can't throw. If your kid is a thrower, of course you don't let them do things that are not safe. So if they're knocking their head on the ground or they're throwing something, of course you say, yes, you're upset, but I'll put a pillow here so you don't hurt your head. Or, yes, you're upset, but, ooh, you can't throw that. That's breakable. Have a Nerf ball or have a pillow or something. If they're physical that they can hit, you can say, get out the angries. Get out what doesn't feel good. When you feel better, I have something to tell you that I think might feel better. And breathe with them, stay with them, but don't punish them for it. If you punish them for it, you've gone off on that detour again. Now they don't trust you. And then now they're not going to come to you with a problem. And
you
now,
still haven't met their need.
And they know that when they don't feel good, there's a reason why, because something bad's coming. You don't want to set them up for that.
Yeah.
You want to validate what they're experiencing. Doesn't mean give in to everything. Doesn't mean they can touch it. Just like Melissa said, I'm going to go touch it. Doesn't mean I have to let her go touch it. I can say, no, you really want to touch this? This is really shiny. I'm not going to let you touch it, honey, because it could break. You have boundaries. But you have them in a loving way. And it's all about the way you approach your child. So I want to take this we only have a few minutes left, but I want to go into the school age years. If your kid comes home from school and says, I hate school, or my teacher's mean, or I'm not doing my homework, I want to say that many kids experience this because we don't have time to go into the school systems. But there's a lot about the school systems that aren't meeting children's needs, and that's crazy making. And we honor tests more than we honor human beings. But your children are being sent into the system every day if you're not homeschooling or sending them to an alternative kind of a school. So if your child is coming home saying these things, there's some legitimacy. Now, I was a teacher, and I'm not saying that it's the teacher's fault, because the teachers are working in the same crazy system that the kids are going through. But the challenge for a parent is how to help a child, especially an intense, sensitive, freedom-seeking, energy-reading child who's picking up the real craziness of school and knows it doesn't feel good. So I just want to check in with Melissa. You did go to a private school. It was a school that your dad and I chose for you, but there was still, and I taught in that school. I was a teacher in that school. So I saw the good and the bad, and I knew what was great about it and, what energetically wasn't working. And so let's just say you come home and you say, what, I hate my teacher, or I don't want to go to school, or school's not fun, or What does a sensitive kid pick up in school?
Well, there are a lot of things that are going on. There are dynamics between the children, and I think for me as a highly sensitive, I picked up on the mean kids. I picked up on their not nice, their own hypocrisy, maybe stuff that they were bringing from their own homes into school, and maybe some of those kids didn't feel empowered at home, and so they found their power in the classroom by being mean to other kids, and that always bothered me. Um, uh, Homework that never worked for me. There were a lot of things that went on in school that are normal and part of school that didn't work for me because of my temperament and my way of experiencing the world. So I'm here to say it's not easy. There's not necessarily a magic answer because this is the way that the school system is set up. So the best you can do is validate your child and say, yes, school is a hard experience for you. It's not easy for you to do this. You don't like doing your homework. I understand. I'll sit with you while you do it. There are a lot of dynamics that go on in school that can be hard for a highly sensitive child. And for me, I think the thing that I picked up on the most was hypocrisy in the school system. Maybe a kid whose parent donated a lot of money to the school getting different treatment, or it felt that way to me. Again, as an energy reader, you pick up on things that other people don't necessarily pick up on, and it doesn't feel good to be told that what you're picking up on is wrong or inaccurate, because when you're highly sensitive, it's something you know. It's not something that other people can convince you out of. When you know, it's an inner knowing, and it's the truth that you're experiencing. And so trying to convince your child that what they're experiencing is not what they're experiencing, again, is going to lead to a big reaction. So I think, as you said, the best you can do is validate your child's experience and say, yes, this is hard for you. Yes, school is not as much fun as it could be. Yes, I understand that your teacher is not nice to you. And again, not having kids in a school system, I don't know how a parent can deal with it, but maybe a parent wants to talk to the teacher and just say, Melissa's having a hard time with this one kid. Are you noticing anything between them? Or are you noticing that the other child is maybe bringing something into the classroom that my daughter is picking up on? But I think school is really hard for sensitive kids because they pick up on things that other people don't.
Yes, and a lot of times they're picking up on the fact that the teacher is a hypocrite, because
sometimes
teachers are just human beings. And again, I work with some wonderful teachers, but I also work with some teachers who would lecture about how you should be nice to each other, and then she wasn't so nice.
Yeah.
So a very sensitive child, that would really bother, a really sensitive child, and notice it. And if you can't homeschool, if you can't pick the school, you can't ask for a certain kind of teacher, then again, let's go back. It's the same thing. That's what's so good about this, is you handle everything pretty much the same way. You handle it like this for all children, okay? Everybody needs this, but especially the sensitive, intense children, because if you don't do this for them, they either have to shut down or have big reactions. Okay? So what is it that you do? You stop what you're doing. Whether you're on your iPhone or you're cooking dinner, or whatever you're doing, if you sense your child is legitimately struggling about something, you be present. Because you're working on your relationship, and you're also working on helping this child deal with life. It's not just get them to listen,
right.
Get them to do their homework. It's more important than that. You look in their eyes and you say, what, honey, something's happening for you now. Sounds like you need me. Maybe they can express it if they're a little bit older. If they're younger, they can't express it. You have to read into it. You have to figure it out. But you always validate by saying, so something doesn't feel so good for you? And that might be as deep as you can get. But at least the child knows you're there with them.
And that's huge for a child. For a child to hear something doesn't feel right to you, rather than what's wrong with you.
Yes.
Just shifting from that to recognizing and letting the child know that you recognize that something isn't working for them is huge. And that will again, speaking for myself, will really temper the big reactions or the temper tantrums.
Yes. And so the next step is if you can give language to what might be happening. If they're older, they might be able to help you and give language. If they're younger, you could try to give language. You don't want to take a bath. Something in the bath doesn't feel good. Maybe the water's too cold. Maybe the water's too hot. Maybe you don't like when it goes down the drain. Let's see. First you give language. First you validate. Then you give language. See by the kid's reaction. Are you getting any closer? Maybe they'll soften a little bit for you as you kind of hit on it. If you don't hit on it, you can say, I'll go with you.
Yeah, I think it sounds like what you're really saying is parents have to be detectives. And they really have to be willing to take the time to figure out what's going on with their child. Because when they're not, then the child doesn't feel understood. Because the child isn't understood.
Yeah.
And then they have a big reaction, and the parent responds to the reaction instead of the child's need, and then you get stuck in this cycle of your child not feeling heard and having a big reaction, and before long, your relationship has a lot of repairing.
Yeah, and because if it's homework or it's the bath, if it's all about taking a bath or doing homework, and you skip over the most important part, which is your child and how your kid is experiencing life and his or her relationship with you, then you'll have the kid who did homework, but you won't have a relationship that really goes into the future. So we're getting near the end, and we can talk about this more, and we can actually bring Melissa back again, and we can talk more about, how to deal with more specific things. But basically, if you get out of today's show anything, it's one, these kids come in hardwired this way. They didn't ask for it. You didn't ask for it. But you got to make peace with it and stop fighting their hardwiring, because it is who they are and it's who they're going to be. Hardwiring doesn't change. The second piece of it is, so what do you want to do with it? You want to try to understand your child. Don't label, don't judge as much. You can say it's hard, this is challenging, it's not exactly what I wanted, but you got to make peace with it. And then when the child is having a reaction, to think differently about it. So you're not going to the judgment of the child, you're going to the, what does this child need from me thinking? And what the child always needs first is validation. Of course, if it's safety, keep them safe, like out of the roadway. But then it goes to validating. But something's going on for you. Something doesn't feel good. You need something. You want something. Again, as they're older, they'll start to help you. But when they're younger, start to give as much language to it as you can. And then say to them, I'll help you. Doesn't mean you're going to give them everything they want. I'll help you so you feel good. Let's see what we could do. You want to climb? Yes, you're a wonderful climber. But mommy's chair is not something good to climb on. Let's go find something good to climb on. He may have a breakdown because he really wants to climb on your chair. And you could say, you really wanted to climb on mommy's chair. And again, it doesn't mean you have to let him do it. You could let him have a little tantrum and say, you feel better now. We could go climb someplace else. Or we could go do something else. And your child will learn that he can't always have it the way he wants it. But there's something good waiting at the other end. Not a punishment, but life. That life is good. You can get beyond these intense feelings. And life is good. And let me just end today with something else. If your child is an energy reader, that's wonderful. Because if you help your child know that if something doesn't feel good, you're right. That child will know if a stranger doesn't feel good. That child will know if their teenage friends are saying, let's do drugs, and the inside the kid is saying, it doesn't feel right. That child will learn to trust his feelings. You want to build that. You want to teach that to your child.
I remember as a little kid clinging to you a lot when we would go places, and people would say things like, you should push her to go, push her to be nice. When my grandma would come to the house, she had very big energy, and I would hide in my room. It would take me a few minutes to warm up. I could pick up on other strangers, people I didn't know, grown-ups. Some grown-ups didn't feel good to me. I didn't want to be around them. And had you pushed me to be a good girl, to be a nice girl, you would have been pushing me away from my intuition. And as a grown-up, my intuition is my biggest asset. It's what has propelled me as an artist. It's what's helped me be safe. I've been to 40 countries. I've never had any incident where I felt unsafe. My intuition never leads me astray.
This is the kid who wouldn't leave me. People said to me she'll never go away from home. She's traveled the world alone, and her intuition has kept her safe.
Always.
So don't believe people, or even your own thinking that you've been trained to think, if they don't do this now, they'll never. Wrong. Don't buy into that. Be in the present moment and handle the present moment as lovingly and non-judgmentally as you can. And my last bit of advice is, if you do have one of these darling, delicious kids, take good care of yourself because it's not easy. It's not easy to always be there for the sensitive, intense child, and you really got to learn not to take it all so personally and not to worry about them. That's all the time we have for now, Melissa. Thank you for joining me, for being such a teacher to me. Because if it weren't for Melissa, I really would have thought, with all my degrees, I knew it all. And she really pushed me to learn more.
And I still do.
And she's still doing it. And that means we're still learning together. So I want to thank you so much for joining Melissa and me today. And I truly hope that this has given you some insight into your intense, sensitive children.